The most important mindset you can have when you use these tools is to use them with your eyes open. A lot of the embarrassing mistakes we've talked about came from users trusting these models blindly, just treating them as electronic oracles. And we've just learned that they're not. That doesn't mean you have to avoid the tools, but you do have to engage with them critically, just like you would with any technology. There are a lot of ways to approach this, but in this video, I want to boil it down to 3 habits that can help you stay in control. The first is don't lead the witness. The way you engage with these models shapes how they respond, so you need to be conscientious about it from the very first word. The second is to proportion your trust. Some of the things you ask these models to do aren't mission critical. You can just sort of vibe with them, but others need you on high alert for potentially disastrous mistakes. And the third, and the most important habit, is to check. The lawyer's biggest mistake was that it wasn't that he asked AI for help, it was that he unreflectively trusted the information he got was accurate, and that is a huge no-no. I teach a critical thinking class here at Damon, and one of the lessons I emphasize most is how vulnerable we all are to confirmation bias. That's the tendency to seek out information that confirms what you already believe and just ignore anything that would undermine it. That's a very human problem, and learning to defend against it is a key part of becoming a good critical thinker. Now, in the age of AI, that problem gets amplified because sometimes a question is already an argument. Take, for example, the question, why is social media bad for teenagers? If you ask ChatGPT that question, you're leading it, because the most probable continuation of the conversation is one where the model fills in the gaps and finds the arguments that you're looking for. It gives you the evidence that you want instead of questioning your assumptions. Because built into the question is the assumption that social media is, in fact, bad for teenagers. And that's not necessarily a bad assumption. It's just that a prompt built like this is very unlikely to give you any cause to sit back and ask whether you're starting on solid ground. Compare that to this one. What does the research say about social media and adolescent well-being? If you start there, the model has an opening. You've left it room for an answer that doesn't fit your preconceptions. Maybe the research does in fact point to social media being bad, or maybe it points somewhere more nuanced. Either way, you're giving the model to have a chance to give you a clearer view, and it's less likely to drag you down a rabbit hole, because when people get dragged down rabbit holes with AI, it's usually the user who took that first step. The second habit is to proportion your trust. You should ask yourself, what if this thing is wrong? This is also a basic principle of good critical thinking. People are bad at sincerely asking themselves, what if I'm wrong about this? And many people have the same tendency with AI, relying on it so much that they never stop to ask this question, what if it's wrong? Those two modes of failure combined can make a really horrible combination. But sometimes it's just not that serious. Ask ChatGPT for 10 ideas for a 30th birthday party with a cosmic horror theme, and, it'll brainstorm with you in a low-stakes way. That's fine. If it's wrong, it doesn't cost much. Some of the ideas will be real stinkers, but if you're critically engaging with the options, I don't see the problem. Notice that with this question, you already have a standard in mind for what counts as a good idea. That's really helpful. You're not asking the model to decide for you. You're using it to generate possibilities you can evaluate yourself. And that's a good general rule of thumb. When you drag the AI into an area where you're a bit of an authority, you can proceed with a lot more confidence. It's when people ask outside of their expertise that they have to be more careful. And sometimes you really have to be careful, because sometimes the answer to what if this thing is wrong is a potential disaster. If you get the wrong answer to this question, that could literally kill you. So proportion your trust. If the stakes are low, you can go with the vibe, enjoy yourself. But as the stakes climb, you need to lean harder into critical caution. And the key to that is that word verify. Habit 3 is checking it. Distrust and verify. So imagine, for example, you're having a conversation with a chatbot, and at some point you're doing some travel planning, and at some point in the conversation you ask, can I change this flight for free within 24 hours? It says yes. It tells you, you're talking about United, and it tells you that United lets you change for free within 24 hours of booking. And notice here, as these models sometimes do, now it includes a little citation, like a link that you can follow. So in this situation, what should you do? Well, you should ask yourself how high the stakes are, right? Because if you just go with what this model is saying, you might end up making a pretty expensive mistake. In this context, I think you should take a minute. Doing your due diligence could make a lot of difference here. And so, what does due diligence mean? Well, first, start with the source. Now here we do have a source, and the models don't always supply it. So if you don't see a source, you should ask for one, because no source just means the answer came completely from the self-attention and the training, from how it's been trained up. But a source means the model did actually look online, and what it found there is shaping the answer. If you've got a source, check it. Make sure that there's something there. Make sure that it actually leads you to, for example, the United website. And, really, seriously, check it. Don't just go and see. Ask yourself, does the source here say what the AI says it says? If Stephen Schwartz had done this, he'd have found very quickly that those legal cases in his brief either didn't exist or didn't say what had been told. And this step is easily the most important of all the 3 steps and the hardest to get yourself to take. Because it's easy to believe what these models say because they're confident and fluent. Yes, but also it's like literally it's easy. It makes things easier. Clicking on a link is a slog. Stopping in and checking your facts, that's kind of boring work. But, so is brushing your teeth. You've got to do both. Because these are powerful tools that don't know when they're wrong. It's amazing how much you can get done with them. They're incredible aids to productivity. And they're also tools that people are pouring a lot of thoughtful creativity into. But you can't believe them. You should treat them like a brilliant assistant who happens to also be a pathological liar. If you have such an assistant, you could get like a lot of genuine value out of someone like that, but you'd have to weigh it against the danger of undue trust.